Hello, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I've spent 46 years now working to protect animals and people. My background is in policing with covert operations, tackling serious and organised crime, terrorism, and developing multi-agency international safeguarding strategies. I worked in environments where the risk is high and stakes are real, and harm is often hidden until it's too late. So for the last 15 years now, I've focused on advancing animal welfare globally, investigating different types of abuse, organised animal crime, and working with politicians, prosecutors, and police to explain something that is still not fully understood. When you protect animals, you protect people too. How we treat animals is closely connected to how we treat people. It isn't just a matter of ethics or compassion, it's a safeguarding issue, it's a public protection issue, and increasingly it's a violence prevention issue. For many years, animal welfare and human safeguarding were treated as separate worlds. One was seen as just being kind to animals, the other as the protection of people. But research, and most importantly frontline experience, now tells us something very different. These issues are deeply connected. When we understand that connection, we gain a powerful advantage because we can identify risk earlier, we can protect vulnerable people sooner, and we can prevent harm before it escalates. Across England and Wales, professionals are seeing the same patterns, and that's police officers, teachers, social workers, veterinary professionals, domestic abuse specialists. They're all different sectors, but they see the same warning signs, that animal abuse rarely exists in isolation. It often sits alongside coercive control, domestic abuse, child neglect, family violence, and wider vulnerability. Yet despite this, animal cruelty is still too often treated as a standalone issue, something separate, something secondary. And that's where we lose opportunities, because when these warning signs are missed, early intervention is missed. Let me bring this to life with a few real cases. In one case in Wales, April 2024, an argument began over something perhaps seemingly minor, a conversation in a pub, but it escalated. The perpetrator strangled the victim for 10 seconds. 3 months later, after a night out, he accused her again, punched her in the face, spat at her, and threatened to kill her dog. She ran home in fear, and he was already there. He assaulted her again, causing her to lose consciousness. He later admitted multiple serious offences, including intentional strangulation and assault, and was sentenced to 3 years in prison with a 10-year restraining order. In another case, an abusive partner stabbed his girlfriend in the leg with an 8-inch kitchen knife and killed her cat by repeatedly punching it. In another case, a woman was left with 2 black eyes after what was described as an appalling campaign of abuse, while the perpetrator threatened to kill both her and her dog. Now, these are not isolated incidents, they're patterns. They're patterns of behaviour. The connection becomes even clearer when we look at specifically at domestic abuse. Serious case reviews, domestic homicide reviews, and criminal prosecutions consistently show that animal abuse appears alongside violence towards people, towards partners, children, families. Frontline practitioners report the same things again and again. Pets are targeted, and they're targeted deliberately because perpetrators understand something very powerful, that people love their animals. Pets are not property, they're family, and because of that bond, animals become tools of control. They're threatened, injured, or killed, not randomly, but strategically, as part of coercive control. This has a direct and profound impact on victims, because when someone is trying to leave an abusive relationship, they're not just thinking about themselves, they're thinking about their children. And very often, they're thinking about their pet. We see this time and time again. Survivors delay leaving because they fear what will happen to the animal. For some, that fear is enough to keep them in dangerous situations for longer than they otherwise would. So when we talk about safeguarding, when we talk about protection, we have to recognise this. If we ignore the role of animals, we are missing a critical part of the risk picture. Animal abuse is not just about animals. It's often an early warning sign, a coercive control mechanism, and a predictor of escalating violence. If we treat it as a low-level or isolated issue, we miss the opportunity to intervene early. But if we recognise it for what it is, we gain a chance to protect victims sooner, disrupt abuse earlier, and prevent serious harm. Safeguarding is rarely about a single agency. Teachers, social workers, police officers, veterinarians, animal welfare inspectors, community organisations all hold pieces of the safeguarding puzzle. But historically, these systems have not always worked together effectively. Too often, information sits in separate silos, and we know from past tragedies what the consequences of fragmented information can be. Events such as September 11 attacks in the United States and the Soham murders in England, a tragedy brought back into focus recently, taught us painful lessons about the dangers of information not being shared across systems. In safeguarding, missed signals can have devastating consequences. Yet animal harm indicators are still frequently excluded from risk assessments and safeguarding frameworks. When these warning signs are ignored, the opportunity for early intervention disappears. And we already know something about violent behaviour. Violence rarely appears suddenly. It escalates. Coercive control often precedes serious violence, and serious violence too often precedes homicide. Recognising early indicators, including animal cruelty, gives us a chance to interrupt that escalation. To understand this better, it helps to think about networks and connections. When law enforcement tackles an organised crime group, the goal isn't only to arrest individuals, it's to disrupt the network. Organised crime groups depend on connections, people, transport routes, communication systems, financial flows. If investigators identify and target those critical links, the entire network can weaken or collapse. The same applies to domestic abuse. The same principles apply to domestic abuse. Survivors rely on supportive links, friends, family, professional services to stay safe and rebuild their lives. Perpetrators, on the other hand, often work to identify and sever those connections to exert control. Pets are frequently part of those emotional networks. Threatening or harming an animal becomes another way to isolate a victim. Recognising this is central to the Protect Animals, Protect People campaign at Naturewatch Foundation. Our work focuses on two types of links: the positive links, which help protect people and animals, and harmful links, which enable abuse and violence. And our campaigns reflect that approach. The Purple Paw Initiative focuses on building positive links, strengthening empathy, awareness, and safeguarding connections. Meanwhile, our Act to Protect framework focuses on identifying and disrupting harmful links before they escalate into serious harm. But this is a moment of opportunity. In December 2025, the UK government published 2 significant national strategies: Freedom from Violence and Abuse across government strategy, and an animal welfare strategy for England. For the first time, both strategies recognise the overlap between human and animal welfare, particularly within domestic abuse contexts. This is an important step forward. Government has committed to ambitious reforms in both areas, improving protection for women and children, and men, boys, all adults, all humans, all people, everybody, while delivering the most ambitious animal welfare programme in a generation. But strategies alone are not enough. The challenge now is implementation. To help support this process, we examined the commitments using a prevention framework, which we called Act to Protect. The Act to Protect framework mirrors the structure of the UK counter-terrorism contest strategy. It focuses on 4 pillars: protect, prepare, prevent and pursue. Applying this model helps demonstrate how animal welfare measures can actively strengthen safeguarding outcomes. So for protect, which is about immediate safety, that's the first pillar. Protection means removing barriers that stop victims escaping abuse. In many domestic abuse cases, pets become one of those barriers. Victims may stay in dangerous environments because they cannot leave their animal behind. Strengthening protection therefore means recognising pets within domestic abuse protection orders, improving risk assessments so harm to animals is recognised as coercive control, strengthening multi-agency risk assessment conferences process, multi-agency risk assessment conference processes, MARACs, supporting confidential pet fostering schemes, ensuring perpetrators cannot misuse pet microchipping data to track a victim. Removing these barriers can help victims leave abuse situations earlier and more safely. So prepare is about system readiness. Preparation means ensuring professionals across systems can recognise and respond to the risk. So this includes training veterinary professionals to identify non-accidental injuries, ensuring workplaces have policies that respond to domestic abuse, aligning criminal justice responses to sexual abuse involving animals, embedding evidence-led safeguarding across agencies. Veterinary professionals and animal welfare inspectors are often the first people to see signs of harm. Recognising their role in safeguarding can strengthen early detection. So we talk about prevent, stopping harm before it happens. Prevention focuses on culture, education and early intervention. This includes humane education programs, youth and engagement initiatives, tackling online content that normalises violence towards animals, recognising early behavioural indicators. Veterinary professionals and animal welfare inspectors can act as early sentinels, often identifying risks long before other services become involved. When these signals are recognised and shared appropriately, they can trigger support and intervention before harm escalates. The 4th pillar, pursue, accountability and disruption. This focuses on holding perpetrators accountable and disrupting harmful behaviour. It includes improving intelligence sharing across agencies, like the Bishard Inquiry of 2004 said we should be doing. Incorporating serious animal abuse into high-risk offender management. Exploring disclosure mechanisms similar to existing domestic abuse schemes. Recognising animal cruelty within risk management systems, allowing authorities to identify patterns of escalating violence earlier. Safeguarding must also be inclusive. Women and girls, yes, are disproportionately affected by domestic abuse. However, 1 in 6 men will also experience abuse during their lifetime. Survivors from minority ethnic communities, the LGBTQ+ community, disabled communities older people, migrants, all often face additional barriers to disclosure and support. Animals are used as tools of control across all communities. Recognising the human-animal bond can therefore help identify hidden victims who might otherwise remain unseen. Inclusive safeguarding does not weaken existing strategies, it strengthens them. We need to change the question. The cultural shift we now need is simple. Instead of asking, was an animal harmed, we must be asking why. Understanding motivation is critical. What does this behaviour tell us about regarding safety in the home, the well-being of the people involved, or the potential risk to others? When we ask those questions, crimes against animals are no longer viewed as isolated offences. They become opportunities for safeguarding intervention. So lastly, I'd like to end on some hope. Our Purple Paw campaign is there to celebrate the bond that people share with animals. This bond is very, very powerful. It brings comfort, brings companionship, emotional support and resilience. And it's something worth protecting. But today's message is not only about animals. It's about children, it's about safer relationships, it's about families, and it's about safer communities. Research shows that animal cruelty can be an early warning sign. Experience shows that early intervention works. And compassion tells us that empathy must be taught, supported, and protected. Protecting animals and protecting people are not separate goals. They're part of the same responsibility. Protect all animals, protect all people. Thank you for listening.